Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay guys, so we are at the end of Q2, so I always like to do sort of a quarterly check-in with y'all on what my favorite books for the last 3 months have been. This is sort of a recap because I read a lot of books of just really what I thought the standouts were. Basically my criteria is anything that gets a 4.5 or a 5 star from me makes it onto this list. I define 4.5 stars as being a favorite of the year, and I define a 5 star as an all-time favorite. So this quarter I handed out, let's see, 6 4.5 stars and 3 5 stars because this quarter was one of the best I've had in reading in quite some time. A lot of really excellent books. Now I am, peek behind the curtain here is that I am filming this a little bit before the end of the quarter, so there is a chance that I will read something else that I absolutely love, and in that case I will just insert some footage of me talking about it. But so yeah, I will start with my least favorite and work my way up, but just keep in mind all of these are like best of the best, so somewhat an arbitrary ranking. Okay, first I have a contemporary romance that I absolutely loved called Well Met by Jen Deluca. This book does not come out until September, so I will not have a physical copy to show you guys until then because I have pre-ordered it because I loved it. This book, I think, objectively might be closer to a 4 star in terms of quality, but I think for me it just hit all the tropes I wanted, and it was a special reading experience because it was on my first Father's Day without my dad, and so like I think it was just something really immersive and really something that sort of like took my mind off things that day. So I was just like thankful for this book basically, and it just had all the things, like not all, but like most of the tropes I really love in contemporary romance. It was a slow burn, which I really like, a lot of interesting family dynamics stuff happening. It's set in a small town, so you get that sort of community vibe, which I love. And also there's some level of sort of like geekiness involved in terms of it's centered around, they're all like, this whole small town puts on a Ren fair every summer, and like everybody gets involved. All of these adults are like unironically very into this Ren fair. And I just thought that that was a ton of fun. Just made me smile. This was just exactly what I want a contemporary romance to do, and I really recommend it. I think the writing is really strong, so like shout out to Jen Deluca because this is a debut. It was just excellent all around. One that I would definitely recommend. You know, if it sounds good, get it on pre-order. I think it's going to be a hit. Next is another contemporary romance, and that is the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Again, another one that just made me happy, made me smile, and did what I want. In this case, more of a romantic comedy. I should say Well Met is sold as a romantic comedy. I'm not sure that it totally is that, but I didn't care. It was a slow burn romance and I loved it. This really is, I think, a romantic comedy, and it has a fake relationship and forced proximity trope in it in a contemporary. So like those are two of my very favorite tropes. I think the central couple in this are really charming and you really root for them. Like they're just really likable. They're fun characters to spend time with. It's set in Hawaii, so you get a lot of sort of like vacation porn kind of thing. It was just so much fun. I will say that this takes like a dark turn in the last like 20% of the book, and I know some people didn't love that. I think that's a totally fair criticism. For me, I loved this book so much as a whole that by then I just sort of went with it, and Christina Lauren sort of sold me on how that was wrapped up. It also has a very satisfying, extremely petty scene as a part of that last 20% that I'm like here for. So yeah, 4.5 stars. This is another one that I'm just like, this is what I want from contemporary romance. Light, makes me smile, just like good, fun giggles. Okay, and then next we have Promises in Death, which is a mystery set like in the near future in New York City. It is a procedural, and it is the 28th in a series. So I can't get into a lot of details about this because it would start like really getting into things that you just have to get into the series to understand. But basically the setup of this one, like I said, it's a police procedural, and our main character is a lieutenant in the NYPD. The premise is basically that one of her fellow detectives is murdered, and she was dating the medical examiner that is like a main, like one of our kind of main recurring side character things. And so like it's extra personal, and I just think that this is a really good one in terms of the character dynamics I think are handled and progressed in a really meaningful way in this book. And I also just think that the mystery itself was super strong. So I think this is one of the best entries in the In Death series. Like I think it was a really good one. So yeah, 4.5 stars, very enjoyable. I read this one when I was in London. It was a great way to spend time on a train, was reading this sort of like page-turny mystery. Okay, and then next we have urban fantasy, and that is Wolf Rein. This is similar to the In Death book because this is number, I think, 18 in a series, so I can't really get into a lot of details about why I love this, or else it would start to get into spoilers, but let's just say that this is a book that has a fantastic couple at the center of it. So we're following two people, a wolf dude and a Psi woman, and Psi are basically people who have like telekinetic or like mind powers in this world. And so it's following their story as they're kind of getting together, and a lot of it is about like abuse that the main female character suffered, and like the main male character is like kind of trying to help her figure out what happened and like get that situation resolved. So like all of that is really satisfying. And then also at a macro level, because this is a series that has a lot of like political intrigue and machinations, it's sort of like, I would call this like a political thriller urban fantasy, basically. And yeah, I just think that that piece of it, like the thrillery piece, or like what's happening in the world writ large, was also handled really well, and like continues to make momentum in interesting directions. So yeah, just all around, I thought that this was a great installment, the best that she's come out with, I think, since like the 14th book. So it was sort of like a return to form, I think. Next, we have Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie, which I also gave 4.5 stars to, and you guys will be getting a full review of this as a part of Mission Marple later in July, so I'm not going to get into my full thoughts until then. I will just say that the thing that made this such a special reading experience for me was that it's one of the last really good Agatha Christie's I have left, I think, that I hadn't read previously. And in the process of reading this book, I knew it. Like, I was having that special experience when you're reading your favorite author and you're reading a really good book by your favorite author. And that just was such a joy. I really loved, like, this is one of the kind of mysteries she has where they're solving a past murder. Like, that's the primary thing they're investigating, is something that happened in the past. I think that's handled really well. I like a lot of the main characters. Miss Marple herself, I think, is handled really well in this book. Overall, just something that was really enjoyable. It is technically the last published Christie book, period, and also the last published Marple, but it was written in 1946, and I definitely think you don't need to read it last. In fact, I would actually recommend not reading it last. I would recommend reading it in order of when it was written and not when it was published. So it can be read as a standalone, and it's just super, super good. And then the highest ranked of my 4.5 stars is Grey's Sister / I also gave the short story that comes between this book and the third book, Bound. I gave both of them 4.5 stars, and I kind of think of them together. I have an entire review of this series, so I don't feel like I need to get into a lot of details other than to say I think it's super impressive that this is the second book in a trilogy, and it is my favorite book in the trilogy. It's a rare moment. I think a lot of times second books really are where things start to get messy or fall apart. And this book just like is even better, I think, than Red Sister, which is the first book. I loved this, and I love this world. I love how female centered it is. I love how genuinely like competent and like brutal the women in these books are. It's just great. I really recommend this series, so I'll link that review somewhere. Okay, and then moving into our 5 stars. So first, I have talked quite a bit about The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace-Wells. This is a piece of nonfiction that basically is kind of trying to ask the question, what are worst case scenarios with climate change? So a lot of our sort of projections and kind of the way that scientists talk about climate change with the public are very focused on 2 degrees Celsius warming, and he is part of what he's trying to do is really game out what that means on sort of like a human level. This is a very anthropocentric and sort of social justice argument about why we have to start caring more about global warming and really like the direness of our situation. So he's talking about that, and then he's also gaming out like, hey, look, if we don't change things, we will go past 2 degrees warming. We'll start going into 3, 4, whatever degrees warming, and then we're just really screwed. And so he's this is a very dark book. It's very hard to read, and basically I think some of the critiques of these are like, oh, like this is the worst case scenario, and his whole argument is like, we as humans like are predisposed to assume things will turn out okay, and this is a situation where the stakes are so high we need to assume that it will not turn out okay, and like what is our worst case scenario. And there are a lot of notes in this, but they tend to be in the back, so I know that bothers some people. So just as a side note on the experience of reading this, if you want to read like kind of the argument of this book with the full annotations, then I think it's the New Yorker or New York Magazine, I can't remember, they published his original article about this fully annotated, so you can see like where all the studies he's citing reading are coming from and whatnot. But anyway, I love this, like, well, love is a weird word, but this book fundamentally like really changed the way I view the world. So that's why I gave it 5 stars, because like any book that has that impact, I think is pretty significant. Hard pivot now to contemporary romance again. So this has been a really good year for contemporary romance reading for me. A change from last year. Last year I didn't have nearly as many romances that I was really loving and felt great about recommending to people, and this year I definitely have had a lot more. And the number one that I gave 5 stars to is the Austin Playbook by Lucy Parker. You guys have heard me gushing about this. To me, this is just like a prototypical what a contemporary romance is supposed to be like, how it's supposed to be written, what it sounds like, what it talks like. I mean, it's just such a joy. It's just such a charming, delightful book. And the trope that it's playing with is a Slytherin dude and a Hufflepuff gal getting together in the middle of the London West End theater scene. There is a Jane Austen murder mystery play in the mix. They are solving a mystery, like a literary mystery of the past from their families. Like, it just has so many things that I love in terms of tropes in this. And it just has some like really swoony scenes in it, in my opinion. So I just love this book. I've been recommending it a lot. I will continue to do so. Lucy Parker just she always knocks it out of the park for me. So I'm thankful for her, and I really loved this book. Okay, and then if I had to, as of right now, tell you which 5-star book I think is my favorite for this quarter, I am gonna go with No Visible Bruises by Rachel Louise Snyder. This is a book about domestic violence and about intimate partner violence. So I actually don't in this video really wanna get into the full spiel about it because of just the number of content warnings and whatnot that I would feel the need to give. Also, it's just like hard to talk about. So I am filming this in the past, and I am assuming that when you guys have seen this, my June wrap up has gone up, and I'm gonna do in that video like the full rundown of my thoughts, and I will put the warnings in there. All that to say, without getting into the full thing, I will just say that I think that this book is such a great example of what nonfiction can do, which is, it reminds me, I probably said this in the other video, but this reminds me a lot of I'll Be Gone in the Dark in certain ways, because I do think it's sort of a genre mashup, because it reads quite like true crime in certain places because she's really digging into certain case studies, but then it also is a lot of journalism and just sort of like typical like digging into these kind of social or cultural issues, like that kind of journalistic nonfiction. So it's really a mashup, and I think it's really well handled, beautifully written in places. Like, you can definitely tell this is somebody who is a writer and not just like a researcher. And yeah, if this is something where you can deal with the content, and by that I mean it will not be triggering to you, I really would challenge almost anybody to read this, because I think it really opened my eyes in terms of like certain warning signs that could be present in people you love's lives and their relationships. I feel a lot more like I understand kind of like some of those dynamics and how they play out. And I feel like I could spot somebody who is in sort of like an early stage or an early like part of the journey of how you get to a really dark place in these kind of situations. So I would really recommend it to people. And I think I would say it's probably my favorite book I read this quarter, at least right now. Okay, so that is my favorite books of spring 2019 / Q2 2019. Like I said, one of the strongest few months of reading I've had in years. Like, a lot of things that I was really enjoying. This is only my 4.5 and 5 stars. I also have a lot of 4 stars that were just like excellent things that I really enjoyed and would recommend to people. But these are the ones that ultimately kind of made the cut. And yeah, you guys should definitely let me know what you think of some of these books, but also if you have any kind of standout favorites from the last few months, like great things you've been reading, let me know. It's always fun to like love books and gush about them. It's just good times. So let me know that in the comments below. But aside from that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. Hope you're having a super lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye.